fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we are, well, we're not quite at the end of the month of November, but we're getting there, which means we're almost at the end of our coverage of alternate history literature here for the month of November. We're going to have one more episode coming your way next week to wrap things up, just for, you know, an extra little history lesson, because we've been doing a lot of that this month so far.
Question.
Yeah.
Do we have 5 weeks in November? Oh, that's why. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So we're going to be, that's it, chatting about one more adaptation next week. But in the meantime, I guess we wanted to take a look at, the idea, perhaps, or maybe some reasoning, perhaps, as to why in the alternate history literary sphere, we really like to rehash World War II.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
Oh my god, it's so much, though.
There's so much. So much.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Anyway, sorry, before we get started with that, Shireen, what's on your nightstand right now?
Well, as you know, I love a good crappy story.
Yes.
And I watched the movie of Forever My Girl. I think we should do an episode on this. I really like this movie because it's kind of like Nicholas Sparksy.
Okay.
But like a little better because there's some country music in it, which we love some country music. Anyway, so I decided to listen to the audiobook of it.
Sure.
And wow, is it vastly different from the movie.
Oh, really?
Like, so different.
Okay.
I really don't like the main character in the book.
In the book, oh yeah.
In the movie, like, you just immediately love him and you're, like, rooting for him because he's so cute. But in the book, you're like, oh, God, you're like a shit. Like, I don't like you very much.
Oh, God.
I'm like, oh, he's, like, kind of creepy. I'm like, don't love it. Any hoosers, I read that.
Okay.
Or listened to that, and it was fine. I got through it.
It was fine.
But once again, you know, listening to an audiobook of a book that has, like, sexy sex scenes, and you're like, tee!
Yeah, I've tried that a couple of times. I can read all of them. It does not bother me. I can't, listening to it makes me lol a little bit too much. Yeah, I think it's I don't think I can manage that. I think that's it, because, like, you know, like, I know you listened to it, but I read Icebreaker, and it didn't bother me at all.
Oh yeah, I had to stop listening to it because it was just too much.
Yeah.
But, like, I think the problem is, like, the ones where it's, like, 2 points of view where it goes back and forth.
Yes.
Which most of these
when
they're
doing the voice
the
of the other person.
voice.
I know.
I can't. Like, especially what was it, Twisted Love?
Oh god.
Oh my god. What was it that he kept calling her?
Oh fuck, I don't remember. See, that's it. I started listening to the audiobook of that one and I couldn't do it. But I read all four.
Yeah, see, but I couldn't get past the first one because I didn't even finish listening to the audiobook, I think. I had maybe a chapter or two left, but I was like, I just can't listen to this anymore. It's so bad.
It's so bad.
Yeah. Oh man, that's really gonna bother me now. I have to look it up what he calls her. Anyway.
You're gonna look for it?
Yeah, wait, hang on.
Oh gosh. Listen, there's just something about it. The romance that has, like, full-on sex scenes, if you're asking me to listen to it, I can't do it. If you're asking me to read it, okay. I don't care. Maybe it's because the voices sound different in my head.
Is it Sunshine?
It could be Sunshine. Oh, that sounds right.
I think so, yeah. Where he's like, Sunshine. But the problem is, it's a woman doing the voice.
I know.
And so she's like,
I know.
Come over here, Sunshine.
I
and
know.
you're like, ugh.
And you're like, oh, I hate it.
Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway, Megan, what is on your
Agreed.
nightstand?
Yeah, I was kind of between books, and work's been doing what work does, which is making me tired. So I read, like, a couple of, like, really easy, like, one really easy, cozy mystery thing, and another, like, romance one. Basically, I read an English set cozy mystery called Dead and Breakfast, which is like a woman who moves back to, like, her small town, and I believe it was her grandmother's passed away, and she inherits the bed and breakfast. And then a developer who's trying to buy it winds up dead on the property. Like, very, like, very much what you're expecting it to be kind of thing. But that was, like, like, easy very peasy.
Agatha Christie.
Yeah, easy peasy, very quick read kind of thing. And then I also read the latest what's it called? Vancouver Storm book called The Wingman, which is like a hockey romance.
Oh, right, okay. Kind of like Icebreaker.
Yeah, that's it. Like, yeah, that's it exactly. Set with like on like a fictional Vancouver hockey team kind of thing. I think this is the third book. I've read all of them.
I mean, some of these you just can't not.
No, I mean, but also like I feel like with some of the ones where like now I'm used to the characters and I've started it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read all of them. Also, like the Vancouver Storm ones are cute. Like the characters are cute in that one. I will say they're kind of fun. So it doesn't bother me. But yeah, it's true. You just kind of, and I needed something light and like nice and stuff, and whenever I feel that way, I find usually like even if I have like a like another kind of book on the go, like a thriller or a mystery, like a horror book or whatever, like a fantasy that's usually like, you know, like a little bit heftier, like there's more to it kind of thing, I generally also like, because I have Kindle Unlimited, I'll read like a romance or something at the same time because it's just fluff that's just fun.
Well, that's it. Like if I'm reading a book, I'll also often like listen to an audiobook of something. Yeah. But obviously it doesn't always work out for me, sunshine.
It really depends. And it's hard. It's hard for the narrator. God, it must be hard to do that work. Good for you guys. Like all the people who do like voice work like that for audiobooks, that's a lot to... Especially
if you gotta read out sex scenes in like a male sounding voice, you know? Like
that must be funny. Anyway, or Shrene's just sitting here holding her belly with the baby there, like she's gonna pop right out.
I'm just picturing if we did like an episode where we were like doing like a reading.
Oh my god. That would be terrible. Anyway. Oh boy. Anyway, okay. We're getting into the more serious shit. Now we're out of the levity and we're into World War II. There's nothing levity about that.
Let's go, sunshine.
Oh god. Okay. Yeah. So it was one thing. Like I feel like as soon as we started looking into this, we realized just how many alternate histories of World War II.
Well, that's why we had to do a whole separate episode about it, because we're like, well, we're either going to spend like 3/4 of our episode talking about World War II, or we might as well just talk about World War II in another one.
Yeah. That's it. It winds up getting to the point where you're just like, okay, well, it's its own separate thing, I guess, because it's just so... Oh, there's so many. There's like, I'm looking at like a list and there's like 40 of them on here. And some of them are a whole series. Some of them are just one, but like it's so many different things. It's crazy. And I mean, that's the thing, right? Though, is that if you think back to the last 100 years, there are many, many, many historic events that obviously one could take and write an alternate history of course, as well as like the repercussions from that and all that kind of stuff. But I guess you would be hard pressed to find maybe a bigger event than World War II.
And there's multiple reasons for that, right? One being the fact that it was genuinely a world war. Like 100%. Everyone got sucked into this.
It wasn't one of those where it was like we called it that, but like
World War I wasn't like it was, but it was like more European,
a little bit more more hyper focused in Europe, whereas World War II wound up branching into multiple continents and countries across the globe.
Yeah, and I also think that with World War II, if you look at it and you focus on it, it's one of the wars where, as a collective, we came together, and depending on which side you talk to, but I mean, being in Canada, North America, we would say we won. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, the good guys won this war.
There was a lot... I guess because for people during World War II, having the sides that existed at that time, I think a lot of people feel that they can take a look back and easily be able to distinguish, quote unquote, the good guys from the bad guys.
Absolutely. You know? And like, I know that gets a little bit more of a gray area depending on which country you're in.
Definitely.
Like, I know that like the Japanese, there's like a lot of talk, like I've heard people say that like, older generations of Japanese people have certain feelings.
Have different feelings about things,
But it's like one of those where, if you look at like Vietnam or like wars where like the US actually invaded a country for a reason, it's very hard to be like, hey, we won.
Yeah, there's not...
You know what I mean? Like, 'cause, like, you can't say that about Vietnam. You cannot say that about Afghanistan and Iraq. No. Like, you cannot really say that where there was, like, a definitive end.
Yeah.
And, like, a victor, and it was the good guys versus the bad guys,
your classic Western white hat versus black hat thing, and the black hat's always the bad guy and the white hat's always the good guy and stuff like that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't think that a lot of the others are as cut and dry in the same way, or that people feel that they're as cut and dry. Now, I'm sure that there's a lot that obviously people could say about World War II as well.
And we're generalizing here.
Yeah, 100%. Look, obviously we're from a totally different generation too. We were not there.
Mm-hmm. That's the other thing, right?
Everything that we get out of it is everything that we have read about it.
Or seen on our screens, or heard from, like, our grandparents and stuff.
And naturally, much of that comes from the more Western side of the world as well, in terms of what we're taught about the conflict itself.
Right, like, history was written by the winners, right? Like,
exactly.
And that's the thing. Like, this is one of those really specific points where there was a winner and there was a loser, you know? Yeah. And so I also think that, because we're quite far away from when it happened, but it's still considered modern history. Yeah. That's another reason why, like, we toy with this event so much.
Yeah, I guess so, because we're, going on like 70 to 80 years since this conflict occurred, obviously. Yeah. So I guess I can understand that it's a little the further away you get, the easier it is to write about, to a degree.
Yeah, and, like, again, not taking away all the lives that were lost.
Not at all.
On either side of this conflict. Of course, it's November. So,
yes, that's true.
It's Remembrance Day.
We'll have passed the Remembrance Day point by the time this episode comes out, but that is correct. True.
And we were actually having a discussion, not to go off on a tangent about this, people, but we were actually having a very in-depth discussion about this the other day, about like, people who sign up to go to war or like, enlist in the military and stuff in modern day. Yeah. It's such a very murky topic for a lot of people, because there's a lot of people out there who feel that, oh, well, if we didn't have militaries and we didn't have people sign up for the military, then we wouldn't be able to go to war. No. And it's like, ooh, it's not that simple, Well,
there are just so many, there is such a, there's so many elements to it. And because of events like World War II, as well as other global conflicts, obviously, over time that have occurred, it's, that's it. Unfortunately, I do think that people like to think that if we all stopped, it would just go away. Yeah. However, there would never be, not everyone would ever stop. That's just impossible. No. And so, unfortunately, as it stands, military in general kind of needs to exist in pretty much every country, really.
And it's not even necessarily always for, like, international conflicts. No. Like, sometimes they gotta send the military into their own country.
Yeah, there are civil conflicts that occur. There are things that occur on home turf between, like, various different parties and things like that. Like, that happens, that continues to happen to this day.
Yeah, even in Canada we have this happen.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, unfortunately at this point, and yes, a lot of, like, the majority of it is, like, humanity's own doing. However, we've gotten to a point now where, no, it's sort of non-optional in terms of that. And yeah, we were talking about it because we were talking about the idea of, God, what would it be like if we lived in a world in which we did not have people who were enlisting voluntarily, and if drafting was still something that was occurring on a regular basis, how different would things look at that point as well?
Which was, again, very prominent in World War I and World War II, and Vietnam.
Vietnam was a huge one for
that. Korea, people were drafted.
Gulf War possibly as well.
Possibly, not sure. Not as familiar at that stage, but, to draft people is just, like, I think that adds that additional layer of emotion and, like, lack of control that makes for a lot of, like, literature, a lot of, screen time, a lot of things, because you have to put yourself in the shoes of the human who's going through that, you know? Like, if you were a teacher and you get drafted to go into the war, well, that is really not the lifestyle that you had pictured for yourself.
No, not at all. That's it. Yeah, I know. I see what you're saying based on the choice that you've made in terms of your position in life there, and, like, like your education and, like, what you've done in terms of a career and stuff, like your own career path that you've chosen. Yeah, that's a weird thing. I mean, even for either of us, right? It's not it's not like we work in anything in which we would have ever pictured any sort of military service, particularly. Yeah. I guess things are so different here as well, because we are not in a country in which there is forced military service.
Right.
It's not mandatory military service that occurs when you're 18, 20,
Right.
however old, depending on where you live, obviously. And that is still something that occurs in multiple countries.
In many countries,
Yes,
all over the world.
Yeah, that's still something that you see. So.
Many countries, and we're just lucky that we don't live in one of those countries.
In one of those countries, that's it, exactly, where there would be mandatory service. And it's usually 5 years in most places, as far as I'm aware. So,
well, you're fully trained up, fully ready to go if the day comes where they have to call you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, so I think it's true. I think that, I guess just something like this has just made authors over time, you know, particularly people who are interested in the history of World War II itself, really, I guess, sit back and think of a different kind of world, especially since we're so far ahead of that now, and it's been quite a long time at this point since World War II occurred and ended. Just like, man, what would it have looked like if certain things had gone very differently from how they did? I think the majority of like what I've come across in terms of these stories are like, I would say the vast majority of them are like, what if the Nazis won? Like that's a big
because of this like dichotomy between good and evil.
Yes, exactly.
I'm using air quotes here, but it's like if evil won, then what would the world look like?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. That's it. And I have seen some as well, like alternate histories to do with like Pearl Harbor, for instance, maybe either having occurred in a different way or not having occurred at all in some cases and things like that.
The Americans didn't get involved in World War II, what would have happened?
What would have happened? Yeah, that's it. Like, what would that have looked like? Oof. It's a weird thought overall, and I guess that's what it is. I guess just like a conflict of this size is just going to cause people, like, we're never going to stop writing about it.
No, because it affected so many people for so many generations.
Yeah, that's it, for so long, and there was so much. In spite of everything, there was so much like new technology introduced because of it.
Oh, yes, there was. I mean, like, you know, it's very well known that we made a lot of medical advancements during World War II, and not for good reason.
No.
Because we were testing on humans,
on people,
the way that we should not have been.
No.
You know, and so like, and again, these new technologies emerged because we were doing shit that we weren't normally doing. You know.
Yeah.
And that's a terrifying thought as well, right? And I believe there's been some exploration of that too in literature, of like, hey, what if we just removed all the guardrails here like we did in World War II? You know?
Yeah, that's it. Where would that look like?
Technologically speaking and societally. Ooh.
How would we treat other people? Like, how different would it be? Probably very different is the answer to that question.
Fucking war of the worlds up in here.
Yeah,
you know?
it would be. It would not be great, particularly, and that would be because you do get into a lot of the World War II alternate histories take on a very distinct dystopian tone.
Oh yeah,
you know,
very much so. You know, anything I've seen. This is not a genre that I would read. I'll preface by saying that. Never, ever would I pick up... First of all, I would never read anything about World War II, just because, A, I find it difficult to read. Like, it's a tough one.
It is.
But B, there's been so much of it.
Well,
you know?
we have so much information about it because of the impact that something like that, a conflict like this had on the entire globe.
Absolutely.
It's... I mean, for some people, that might be something that they're interested in. But yeah, I would find it hard to motivate myself to, on top of that, add an additional element of like, oh, and here's another story about it where we're asking a different question, like what if something different had happened, which is interesting. Yeah. But oh Lord, like I don't know if I have the bandwidth for it. No. You know? Like,
and it's not that I've never read anything or about World War II. Like I have because through school or whatever. But at this point, like I have a bit of fatigue about it.
Agreed.
Like I did actually watch the mini series of All the Light We Cannot See. I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't watched it now.
It is actually very good.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, okay, this one was really good.
Yeah. It's not to take away from any of these stories having been published.
Really good. But all that to say, where I was going with this is it gets really dark and gritty because, like, World War II was one of those things where it's like, regardless of who was going to be the winner, it was going to be dark for a long time after.
Yeah, and to a degree, even with like the quote unquote winner, like everyone's a bit of a loser in this circumstance, you know, just for so many different reasons, even if you're, you know, taking away like the actual, like the death toll and things like that. And you simply add something like the psychological toll that this took on an entire generation of people.
Oh, so many.
As well as the generation that came immediately afterwards. So like you know, when people get very kind of like annoyed with maybe some of the older ideals or different kinds of ideals that like the baby boomer generation has versus newer generations like their own children and everyone who's followed since that point, you know, I guess we do have to stop sometimes and take thoughts a little, like, you know, think a little bit about perhaps like the environment in which like the baby boomers were raised, which was by parents who had just lived through World War II.
Oh, 100%. Like, you know, like we have this such a different outlook on life, you know, like millennials with their boomer parents, you know, because they... like their parents were all about rationing and like and like my mom, for example, who's from England and a very industrial part of England, true. You know, she was raised in an environment where it was like you're working class, you go to work, you put your head down, and that's what you do. Yeah. And you are grateful for what you have. Yeah. You know? Whereas, and so it's like, it's very like limited of what you have.
Where we're seeing so much, so many changes with that now in working spaces where a lot of people are like, no, I will not be mistreated at my position simply because I should be grateful to have a job at all. You know, because it's not really like that anymore, and the job market doesn't really function that way anymore either, which is also, you know, why you see a lot less long term in terms of people joining a company and staying with that company
for 35 years.
Yeah, it's not as common anymore, you know, and that's something that I think that the job landscape itself is changing a lot in that way too. And that's it. Yeah, if you look and you trickle all of this down, it kind of, a lot of it does kind of come back to, particularly because there are still multiple people on the planet who are alive who lived through World War II, as well as the generation that came immediately afterward as well, right? And so...
yeah, and they're like in an aging mindset now, right? Like they are kind of the older population now. And so I think, you know, they're also the population who was not going to be the first one to go and knock on a therapist's door for help. So... you know, you're kind of seeing this amalgamation of all of this. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing, like, alternate fiction about, like, the baby boomers.
That would be interesting.
Like, kind of the fallout of World War II. Yeah. I mean, you know, you've got literary works like 1984 that were written. Yeah. He wrote that in 1948, which was just after World War II, and it was based on his fears of what the future was going to be because of
a direct impact of what occurred during World War II.
Exactly, and there's a lot of that type of literature, so it'd be really interesting to see if anybody starts picking up, like, you know, what's going to happen to the baby boomers or what could have happened, you know?
Oh, like how different would that generation have been if they hadn't have been a generation that was directly impacted by a global conflict prior to... no, that would be an interesting kind of thing. That would be an interesting kind of thing to see. And I wonder how many more of these types of stories we're going to see in the long run, again, as the population of writers out there ages and changes and a new generation sort of comes forth as well. Like, how much of that are we going to see or speak about on a regular basis versus like what we've seen now, and the sheer volume of these stories that exists at the moment that ask a question of like, oh, what if things had gone differently? Wow. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, we just got like very
what's the word we're looking for?
I don't know. Very philosophical with it, I suppose. But anyway, sorry. We just like waxed on for a little while there, but it's okay.
Wax on, wax on.
Anyway, yeah. So we're coming at you next week with one final adaptation, which is also a period piece from much, much, much further back. So we're going to be talking about that next week. And in the meantime, you know, if you have any like if you have an affinity for like alternate history set during like World War II or prior to or after, whatever the situation might be that has to do with them, you know, let us know about them over on Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at fullybookedca. And don't forget to head over to the website fullybooked.ca and sign up for the newsletter. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.